So it's my turn today. So we will, I just had a cue here about the recording. Okay, we've got an acknowledgement to do. So we'd like to begin by acknowledging and honoring with gratitude the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of First Nation elders and peoples who have lived and continue to live here and have cared for these lands. Zoom etiquette, typically we don't have to remind people of Zoom etiquette, other than I will remind you that when we take a vote, it's sometimes hard to keep track. So we have kind of adopted the procedure of counting nays, and where it seems that we've got a pretty tight vote, then we do a roll call. So given that, in case you're wondering why we're asking for nay votes first, it's just usually a little easier. We've got an agenda today. Mr. Moslin has taken the time to prepare it and send it to everybody. I hope you've had a chance to review it. In view of that, do we have any late items that we'd like to add? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Kathy? And second, Darren, thank you. We have an agenda. Minutes from the May 19th meeting were also forwarded in the package that Chris sent. I hope you've had a chance to go through them. The meeting's also available on a Zoom recording at the Social Services Advisory Group site, in case you wish to watch it, to catch up or whatever, especially for new members. That said, we need a motion to adopt the minutes. We've got Alan Cooper making the motion and Kathy, I believe, seconding. Okay, thank you. We've got a number of reports today, starting off with Mr. Pratt regarding the Hardy View Lodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're continuing to see between 9 and 12 clients a night up there. We haven't seen that predictable drop that we thought we'd see during the summer months. So yeah, it's just kind of continuing to cruise along. And if it pleases the chair, I'll just continue into the COVID update as well.
Yes, please.
So we continue to hold 3 rooms, and we've had no necessity to activate any of those rooms at this time. So the outreach team is still out there doing their thing, but we have had no confirmed cases of COVID within our vulnerable population.
Awesome. Questions for Darren? Mr. Moslin?
Thanks, Chair. My counterpart, Councillor Thompson, seems to be missing still. But my question, Darren, for you, outreach is continuing through a variety of I'll call them encampments or locations around the community. Is there continued outreach to the Moto site? That's my question.
You bet there is.
Thank you.
Further questions regarding either Hardy View or the COVID vulnerable program?
I've got another one then. I got a question. I know it's nothing to do with you, Darren, but are renovations continuing at Hardy View Lodge?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Councillor Moslin.
Well, I know the owners of Hardy View Lodge continue to renovate, and quite often people, or sometimes the neighbors, associate that with expansion of the shelter. So in case there's neighborhood confusion, my question is, to your knowledge, are renovations by the owner continuing at Hardy View Lodge?
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So what I'm going to do then is I'll bump the update on the Moto initiative which was going to come from Christine, as well as the update on the Wholeway House. And I'll just bump it down to the bottom of the reports section, and hopefully Christine will join us by then. Chris, have you got her on cell? Would you maybe?
Yeah, I do, Chair, and I have her lined up to call here. Just hoping to get a minute to do that. Do you want? I'll give her a call if you want to carry on with the meeting, Chair.
Okay, so we've got a report from Juliana. Are you okay just taking a brief minute to give her a call while we do that? But I don't see Juliana here either.
No, Juliana did send her regrets.
Oh, okay.
I've got a brief report from her that I can relate to the meeting if you wish, Chair.
Hey, how about if I bump that down? We're missing Christine, we're missing Juliana, and I don't see Tanis here at present.
No.
Is there a substitute from Coins? No, so Tanis was supposed to give a report. So we will bump all those down with hopes that people will show up later and then just fit it in where we can. Heather is not here either for a report on provincial outreach.
Debbie is here, Chair, Debbie Ponel, if she would like to chime in instead.
Sorry, I'm not sure what that was about for Heather.
Well, do you want to briefly describe, Debbie, how you're dealing with your position in our community? I know you're now a.
Okay, sure.
Thank
Sure.
you.
So right now I'm still working out a process. Heather was only here 1 day a week, and I'm here 5 days a week. So currently I sit either at Service BC, I sit at Coins, and I sit at the community kitchen. And I'm available for any of the people who need my services, which is financial services.
Okay.
I was able to go out with the harm reduction team from Nelson last week to Moto. We went to Moto and a couple other camps. That's basically it. I'm just here to help who are our barrier clients, people.
Okay, thank you, and welcome to your new position here. And while I'm welcoming people, I should just take the time to welcome a new face that just dropped in, William Cayley. Thanks for joining us, William. You're here with Habitat, I gather.
I am.
And thank you. Okay, we've got Bev then with a report on mental health outreach.
Hi, thanks, Jan. I was hoping to maybe be delayed a bit because I wanted to invite in my substance use connections worker, Lindsay, because she's the one that actually does that outreach, but she's busy with someone right now. So she won't be here, but I'm going to get her to come and speak to the committee the next time we meet in maybe September. But I can tell you about her job. She can tell you better, but I'm happy to fill in. She can't be here. So we've gotten some more FTE, which is full-time employment hours, the mnemonic for that from Interior Health for another 3 days of our connections workers. So we now have actually 5 days a week, although it's split between 2 people. It is that many hours a week for our substance use connections clinician, and it's an outreach nurse position. And so the outreach nurses are to go out into the community. They do go around to Moto, some other camps. They go into the shelter. I think Lindsay goes once a week into the shelter, as far as I know, and other places where vulnerable folks might be. And they can offer a number of things. They offer harm reduction supplies. They offer referrals to different community programs. They do wound care, other kind of street nursing interventions, and really what they're basically supposed to be doing is trying to connect people with substance use services, whether they want to go to detox, whether they want to become a client at the OAT clinic, the opiate replacement clinic that runs once a week here, whether they're interested in treatment. Yeah, and so they just try to understand what it is that people would be helpful to people and try to do their best to hook those people up with those services. So we're pretty happy to have that position, another 3 days for that position. We've got Lindsay would have the 3 days, and we've got another a nurse that's working 2 days, but she's actually, I'm not going to be there. We're going to have our old clinician back off maternity leave for Substance Use Connections in a month. So there'll be that team of the two, and I think that they're going to be really good. And I really wanted Lindsay to be able to speak to you today, but as I say, she's with someone right now. So so that's a major update for our outreach. Yeah, I mean, we have our PSR outreach clinician 1.5 FTE for that. That's a position that's been we've had for a long time, and those are people that deal with our clients that are registered here that struggle with severe and persistent mental illness, and they do outreach with those clients. They do med checks and take them to appointments and stuff. That's a different sort of outreach than the nurse, the street nurse position. So that's basically what we have for outreach at this point. Yeah, I'm really happy that we've got this extra time for our Substance Use Connections clinician, and I think it will be helpful for the community. So that's my report today, and I will get Lindsay to join in next time we meet, and she can talk to you about the position because she's really the expert.
Thank you, Bev. That's great news on the extra hours there. Questions for Bev? I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll move forward. Welcome, Christine. Welcome, Heather. You've both got reports on the table that I've moved here. So I guess, Christine, can we start with you with an update on the MOTO initiative?
Yes, the MOTO initiative, we are still working with BC Housing. They are currently doing some investigations on whether or not there are First Nations things there, and whether or not we'll be able to use that property should BC Housing agree to that location, and being able to build our supportive housing and shelter, etc. So it's still a work in progress.
So in other words, the archaeological assessment.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. All right, questions regarding MOTO? Kathy Hutton? Kathy, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sure can.
Good, thanks. I'm wondering if there's city services like water and sewer over there.
That is something that we'll be looking into. My understanding is that water is available to Valley Heights, and so it's possible to do an extension on the water that way. As far as sewer goes, that's going to be a very expensive deal, prospect. And we're going to have to either work with them on a septic system, or perhaps apply for funding to have sewer put into that area.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead, Kathy, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, is BC Housing willing to pay for services over there along with the building?
That I'm not 100% sure of. I would imagine to a degree they are, but I think it would depend on how much it was going to cost and whether or not there was cost sharing. So
Okay,
That's kind of where that's at, so.
thank you.
Any other questions? I see Ann Palmer has got a hand up. Ann?
Thank you. I was just wondering how the discussions have gone in regards to our campus of care concept.
That right now is, it's been put into the hands of BC Housing, and I understand, I believe that is something that they are interested in looking at, but I can't speak to that for sure. That would be a better question, I think, for Councillor Baker. And I can check with him and get back to you.
Well, Everett is on the line. I don't know whether or not the committee is in agreement, but I can invite, well, like Everett is in the gallery right now. And if there's no objection from the committee, I'm sure everybody would be interested in hearing directly from Everett if that's amenable to everybody, including Everett.
I'm certainly in favor of that.
Any objections? How about you, Everett?
No objection. No objection.
Thanks, Everett.
Yes, so as far as Moto is, we are in archaeological discovery right now. There were BC Housing was on the ground here on Friday, begin walking the property and looking at that. Obviously, with the discovery of the remains in Kamloops, it does bring some, more focus, government focus on the archaeological end of this. So obviously that's an important issue before moving forward. They do have consultants in place regarding other, structurals and all that, but everything will kind of rate right now on the archaeological. As far as the infrastructure, yes, we can get water from Valley Heights, as Councillor Thompson said, to the site, but not sewer. So probably based on just the number, would probably put in a sewer system. That's what our thoughts are. And BC Housing does have funding available for build and for infrastructure if they deem the property appropriate. For wraparound care, such as a campus of care, we have been in discussions and will continue in discussions. Obviously, that will also involve the provider with Boundary Family Services, which we're very pleased that they have been appointed as the as provider. So that will be ongoing discussions. Our first, or at least my first need is to get them to accept the property and then to allow it to go to zoning, public zoning and things like that to get to that point, further discussion. But yes, it is a continuing discussion. Right now we meet with, have a phone call with David Eby, Minister Eby, once every 2 weeks. And so far, we're advancing, but, I've always said that I'd like to see a good wraparound services there in our supportive housing here. So that discussion is ongoing.
Thank you,
I hope
Everett.
that's helpful.
Yeah, it is. Thanks. Everett, would you be willing to field any questions if there were any?
Happy to, yes.
Anyone with a question for Everett?
Yeah, I'd like to know what happened with the, apparently there was discussions that with this happening with BC Housing, that there would be some kind of extra patrolling to get people not to be camping on the riverbanks, and because the shelter was going to be open 24/7, 365, that they would be encouraged to move there. What's happening with that?
Okay, yes, the minister and I are in constant conversation regarding the encampments along the riverbanks and on Crown land. That continues. Obviously, many of you may know about the garbage that was dumped in front of City Hall this week. In fact, the minister and I are meeting at 4:30 this afternoon discuss that. I did send him the information so that he's aware. And I will continue to pressure government to give us the occupation permit that will allow the city to go ahead and to start to remove some of these encampments that are just not safe. And so that's an ongoing process. Yeah, and I'm working on it. It's not going to happen overnight, but you know, things of what happened in front of City Hall that draws that attention, and I will use that as a communication tool with Minister Eby when I speak to him, and then council. I will assume we'll be dealing with this on Monday at our council meeting. So,
just as a point of clarification, Everett, I think that there may be some confusion about what I'm interpreting as two separate issues. One being an occupation permit and rezoning for Moto to accommodate the facility, and the other being what's called a license of occupation, which is about the particular to the riparian zones along the river, which would give the city administrative control over those areas, as opposed to what has historically been the precedent with the province administering over those areas and enforcing bylaws. But that's just a point of clarification for everyone, because I think it's important that we treat the two issues, let's call them, as being separate, not necessarily contingent on each other. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, there will be a zoning we'll go through once, if and when BC Housing accepts or can build up in Moto. And then the other is occupational permit for the river and crown land, which will give the city bylaw control over rather than the provincial government. And as you can imagine, provincial government, really, it doesn't matter what government is in, struggles with trying to remove individuals from riverbanks and where their housing may be set up. So this would allow us as a city to be able to do that. And we're hopeful that we will receive that from it's usually for 10 years. So we're working with the Ministry to see if that's possible.
And Christine Thompson. You're muted, Christine.
I'm not having a good day here. If there's no objections or no further questions, perhaps Everett would be willing, if there's no objections, to speak to the next issue on Holway House, because he's got the information firsthand.
Any objections? Well, I'm happy you were in the gallery today, Everett. Looks like you're the man of the hour.
Thanks.
Holway House update then. Thank you.
So I did receive information from BC Housing the middle of last week. I think it's just the day after their council meeting, that Holway House had not been approved for funding through BC Housing. So it will not be going ahead as we know it. Whether Jenny and the group will seek an alternative, I'm not sure. I haven't spoken to her personally, but I know that has not been approved. So I have shared my dismay with Minister Eby and with BC Housing on this not being funded, and we'll just have to look at other options. And I'm sure it's out there. So I certainly, as the new liaison with seniors, I'm very keen to see the possibility of the senior center that's in the park, whether the feasibility of that getting put back, reinstated as a senior center, whether that's possible now that we've kind of done a bit of demapping and know the flood lines and stuff. So that will come before council. I've asked staff to do prepare some work on that. So that'll be at our first council meeting in July that will come. So hopefully that'll bring us some good news and move forward. But unfortunately, yes, Holway House did not receive its funding.
So it's fair to say that Holway House is on hold.
Yes, that would be fair to say.
Okay, questions? Seeing none, we'll move to the next item. Thank you, Everett, for answering questions.
Sorry, I had a question, Tammy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tammy, I didn't see your hand up.
No, I spoke, but my mic wasn't near enough to my
Okay.
face.
Go
I
ahead.
just had a quick question for Everett. Because we're recording this, I'm wondering, for those that don't know what Holway House is or was meant to be, if you could just give us a quick description of what that project was hoping to be.
Sure. The Holway House actually came through approval before my time on council, but because of my senior liaison, it fell in kind of into my hands, and the fact that I've been working with Minister. So it was a seniors low cost or shared cost facility that was hoped to house a community center for seniors up by Silver Kettle on city property. So it was an agreement between city, a private organization, and BC Housing. So all three played a role. And so that's what it was. It was a low cost housing for seniors and set around veterans. I guess it was originally set to be set for veterans, but it would have been a low cost senior housing here in Grand Forks. So.
Thank you, Everett. Further questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next topic. Again, thank you, Everett.
You're very welcome.
I see Heather is with us now, so we can maybe ask Heather to update us on the provincial outreach.
Hi, okay. So as you see, Debbie's here as well. Debbie has now been hired to be the community integration specialist for the Boundary region. So she'll be exclusively covering your area, which I felt always that I was just barely scraping the surface with the logistics of traveling back and forth and the vastness of my region. I've also just found out today that we've been approved to hire mentorship workers. So this is other workers that would come on temporary assignment because the ministry is obviously planning to expand the program as it becomes more and more successful, and we have more service providers that we're working with, and of course an increasing number of homeless and clients with serious barriers to service. So Debbie's just begun. I believe she's already now sitting at the community kitchen. I'm not sure what days or day of the week and when, but she can maybe elaborate on that after I'm done. Also, she'll be connecting with as many service providers in the area to try and see what she can do to offer her services to them. A big part of the community integration program is that we would like to see the main communities in areas create these like hub models where, you know, it's kind of a one-stop shop for people who are experiencing homelessness or have serious barriers for service. So she will be connecting with different service providers. We're hoping we can connect with the new building hub in Rock Creek and, you know, and be connected with any kind of housing providers in the area. Because that's a big part of our deal is like for most of our people that have barriers, if they don't have ID, they can't get into BC housing, you know, so a big part of our job is ID. And the second biggest part of our job is crisis management, and where we can't get housing for people, like just like anybody else, we can't pull it out of nowhere. But if a client needs that damage deposit today in order to secure that housing, we're the person to contact. So that's a huge portion of our work, because we have to be available and flexible enough to be able to print out those or get those checks printed out or whatnot, so that that client could get that housing. So, you know, I'm sure Debbie will be out and about in the community, and you'll see her more and more, and she will be the point person there. So I'm really looking forward to having her as a partner on our team, because we really do in community integration work as a province-wide team, helping to, you know, really helping to advise our ministry on the issues surrounding homelessness and low barrier folks in our communities, because realistically our communities are not like any other communities, and we all have our own individual barriers and economic situations. And I really think until this program, specifically in our ministry, wasn't really aware of the amount of poverty that we see in the interior Kootenays and boundary region. So, you know, it's also promoting awareness to what the issues are and what we can do to help in a better level than just sending somebody off to another office. We can step in and say somebody is being asked to do a CPP application. Now, I don't work for CPP, but the ministry recognizes that if we're requiring that from the client, and the client has barriers and can't access that information, we need to get out there and give them the extra hand instead of just passing them off to somebody else. And this kind of a service helps alleviate pressures on things like boundary outreach workers. You know, we can do stuff that they can't. So hopefully Deb will be well accepted into the community in the next 6 months, and I'm looking forward to her being able to be my right hand in Grand Forks.
Great, thank you, Heather. Yeah, it sounds like a welcome addition. And thank you, Debbie. Questions for Heather? Oh, William? You're muted, William. William, your mic is muted. There we go. I think you're good now.
Heather, you sound like someone I need to connect with. You are with Provincial Services, or?
Oh, Heather, you're muted.
We're with the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. I don't usually say the full thing, but
Oh, okay.
The welfare ministry.
Where are you housed?
Personally, myself, my office is in Trail.
Oh, in Trail.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My area extends from the Salmo Creston across to, well, now Grand Forks has somebody, so to the Strawberry Pass, and then north to Caslow region, down through Nelson, Castlegar, Slocan Valley. Yeah.
We'll be in touch. We'll be in touch.
Okay. Feel free. Also, Debbie, you were gonna say what you have set up right now for where you're sitting at the community kitchen.
Hey, it's Debbie. I did speak a little bit before you got here, Heather.
Okay.
I am now settled at the community kitchen on Tuesdays, 11 till 2. And I am just working something else with coins right now for a time. I think it's going to be on Fridays, but we're not 100% sure. However, coins is very accommodating. If anybody needs anything, I can meet there pretty much any time. And again, I'm at Service BC at times too. So I can pretty much be out in the community at any spot. I'm trying to find a way to be at Midway Greenwood area too. And I'm just got some calls in on that to assist clients who aren't able to get to Service BC office and whatnot too. So it's all brand new. Any suggestions, anything, I'm open.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's the beauty of our position is we're flexible and we're open and we're ready.
Any more questions for Heather? Darren?
Heather, I was just wondering, you kind of catch more information on the other side of the hill. What have you heard about the Kootenai Boundary rent bank that's being put together by Castlegar Community Services? Do we have any more information on that?
Yeah, I don't have any details as of yet, but as far as I know, it's going to be modeled around the ones in the Lower Mainland. So if you look into the programs they're already running in the Lower Mainland, they're low income rent loans for people who are experiencing trouble paying their rent. And their payment plans or their payback is very forgiving. That's about all I know about that, but they are still loans. They're not grants, basically. If we have a client that's in trouble as far as back rent, right now, the focus of the ministry is to keep people who are housed. So getting a hold of one of us is the best plan of action because our supervisors are attuned to this and we get a lot more leniency, I guess is a good word, as far as it goes to issue those amounts to help those clients that are in desperate need, because we'd rather see them stay where they are than end up on the street. But I will certainly send you the information as soon as I have it, Darren.
Thank you. Heather, I've got a question. And stop me if I'm on the wrong track. But you're speaking to assistance with rentals, and as we were, we're painfully aware of in this area that we're facing a rental shortage right now, and especially with the booming real estate market, we're seeing more and more rentals going up for sale, and the pool seems to be, I would say, diminished at this point. In terms of initiatives locally in the Grand Forks and Boundary area, recently we've received word from the Ministry of Agriculture that they're going to revisit the ALR again, and the regional district planning committee has been looking at what this thing might look like with the intent of looking at the construction of secondary dwellings on rural property, which obviously would help to alleviate some of the need if landowners felt inspired to build a secondary home to serve as a rental in particular. That said, it's not a done deal, but it looks like it may be possible in the near future. Has there been any talk at your end about what's happening with the ALR and the possibility of secondary housing being allowed on agricultural land? And wondering if you were aware of those changes?
I am aware there's a lot of talk about what to do about the homelessness problem and the impacts of no low income rentals. Whereas the government keeps announcing new low income housing, that's specifically what it is. It's low income. We do not cover enough for a client to even rent those places. So, rock hard spot sort of thing where I know that I've sat on probably 15 consultations in the last year on what we're going to do about housing in these regions. And, it just keeps turning back at us because the landlords, we did coordinated access in Nelson is just now getting off the ground. The consultations took almost 2 years. And it's still going to be a battle to bring landlords online. I think that it's a great idea to allow secondary housing. I know they're also looking at arable land that is not in use. for, other farmers to do rent share.
What, one sec, Heather. Kathy, I'm gonna ask you to mute your mic.
I thought it was muted.
That's all right, thanks. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Heather.
So I don't really know any details about that, but I do know there's been a lot of talk about that. That's something that's helped alleviate the rental situation in cities like Vancouver, right? Where it's not farmland, but it's single family residence only areas that have been allowed to build laneway housing. It alleviates the issue, but it doesn't solve it, right? So
Yeah, and the thought being that all the parts contribute to the whole, and this is just one more piece. I just wanted to bring that to your attention and subtly encourage you to maybe push your local regional district to go for it and amend their zoning bylaws to accommodate it.
well, if anyone knows me, I'm not that subtle, but I'll try.
All right. More questions for Heather? Okay, I'm looking at our agenda. I think that's all we can do for reports. Tanis is not here for a report with coins, so we'll put that off.
Chair?
Yes?
I'm wondering if it'd be appropriate if we could ask, we were going to have Tanis report on the community action team, and Amanda Erickson, the chair of the team, is actually here. Perhaps Amanda would be able to give us a report on that team and some of the other work that she's doing on the other side of the hill.
Yeah, sounds good. I was just about to invite other people at the table to add any additional reports if they felt so inclined. So that would be great. Amanda, thank you.
Hi. Yeah, so nice to see everyone on the virtual screen. I have a short presentation on the work of the Nelson Fentanyl Task Force over the last 5 years. I'll just need to share my screen. If you don't mind making me a co-host, then I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, that will be Chris facilitating that
thank
for
you.
You're.
I got my fingers crossed, Amanda. I think we've done it.
Yeah,
I'll go ahead.
So you should be able to share at this point, Amanda.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Thank you.
We'll let you know if it works. It says that you're starting to screen share, so we're all good. Looks good.
Oh, great. Okay, so thanks again for having me on. And I'll just kind of breeze through this and tell you a bit about a project that we're doing for our final 5-year project for this work. So, of course, as everyone knows, we acknowledge we're on the traditional unceded territory of Sinixt, Silks, and Tanana Nations. And of course, we know of Anchors, the regional harm reduction provider, Circle of Indigenous Nations, and of course, Freedom Quest as the youth services provider. Here, just minimize you guys so I can read. So we have expanded from the Nelson group, Nelson Fentanyl Task Group, and now there's CAT groups in Castlegar and Grand Forks. We work together with First Nation groups to provide educational conferences for the local communities and work to decolonize our local healthcare practices. So here's a picture of a local elder in Nelson last year, Don Grady, and he's offering a prayer for International Overdose Awareness Day. So as the community facilitator, I've been honored to work alongside almost 300 stakeholders in the West Kootenays. I worked in social services for 21 years in private and public sectors, and I'm a registered clinical counselor. And I've witnessed up close the ongoing dedication and compassion of workers here in making positive change over the past 5 years. So here's a kind of panoramic view of our last big in-person conference in 2019 called Rural Inclusion and Community. So you might see some local workers in there. We had 140 people present. That's down at the Prestige in Nelson. And then the Beyond the Stigma of Substance Use videos are also a Nelson Fentanyl Task Force product. If you've had a chance to view them, they're on the Anchor's website. These are anti-stigma videos, and they interview people who were involved with Nelson Fentanyl Task Force. Last year, due to COVID, we were able to fund direct wages for an outreach worker to help people access what's known as pandemic prescribing here in Nelson. Lost my mouse for a second. And then last year, we were very grateful to donate $10,000 to the Grand Forks Food Banks through our Grand Forks Community Action Team. Here's a photo of our group in Castlegar. You may know Deb McIntosh, she's there in the middle. And so again, this was on Overdose Awareness Day. And we continue to provide education throughout the region virtually right now. And our monthly CAT meetings, these conversations are collaborative, trauma-informed meetings to share knowledge, work across agencies and fields, work to create space for peers, and work to remove barriers to healthcare and meet basic needs in the region. And so this just a short bit about my part of this project, which will be done at the end of July. It's called Peer Equity and Healthcare Equity in our region, and is a collaboration with a group called Redone. We're hoping to have someone on from Redone a little later. So my interviews are with healthcare, emergency responders, and social service people involved in the region. And some of the needs that have been identified in the West Kootenay region include housing, as we've been discussing, more access to opioid agonist therapy, youth detox, local treatment center, long-term trauma therapy, ongoing anti-stigma work, access to low barrier services, and the need for ongoing education around harm reduction, mental health, and substance use issues. So some of my interviews are here, and so I just took some quick quotes. You may know Alex Scherstbetoff, who works with Anchors. He says, if folks had low barrier housings, access to safe supply, regular support and advocacy, I think things would go a long ways. If our folks were together in a community where there's an OPS, safe inhalation, safer supply, counselors, work and skills building, and all of that, it would take care of a lot of things. And then Mandy Root, who I think she does sometimes provide education even down to Grand Forks, but she works out in Nelson. She says, even if that youth isn't actively using, providing them with naloxone, fentanyl test strips, information about the overdose crisis, so they can share that information amongst their community and their families and hopefully save lives. And here's our Nelson Street outreach worker, one of them. So Ryle says, the approach of trying to support, empower, care for, love people is much more effective approach than trying to incarcerate, police, push out. And so I think that recognition of that is really starting to roll, at least as far as I can see. And here's Tanis, who you all know. So she says, I think that we all have to look more towards the trauma and treat the trauma and how it affects the nervous system. I know myself, I'm doing more training because in order to understand the substance use piece, we have to understand what caused it. And here's our former police chief, Paul Burkhart. He was a founder of Nelson Fentanyl Task Force. He says, we did this through the Nelson Fentanyl Task Force where we changed our policy about attending overdoses. We decided we weren't going to do that anymore because we felt that people might not phone to get help and people might die because of that. And then months after that, the provincial policy came out for that. And here's Jasmine, who was a manager at Kootenay Boundary Supported Recovery, which is over in Nelson, a regional recovery center you may know of. I think that the most important thing is human connection. The most important thing we do in that program is just be with people in their lives and provide unconditional love and support. Where is the richness of life? And for me, so much of that richness comes in community and human connection. And that's where the healing happens as well. And my last slide is Amber Streukens, who works at Anchors. And she says, the more connectivity a person has, the more opportunity a person has. And it's those moments I see success. When we have regular contact, regular relationships, regular opportunities for engagement and growth, that's when I see people start to stretch to take a bit more wellness. You've got to stabilize that core safety of staying alive and then build out from there. Okay, thank you. I hope I didn't take too much time.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Amanda. Questions for Amanda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward. I just have to move back to my agenda here. We do have room for reports by others, and in particular, I'm looking at some of the new people to the table. Is William still with us here? I think William, oh, there he is.
I am.
William, anything on habitat for us?
Well, let me just give you a little spiel and then answer that directly. Habitat for Humanity stretches from Rock Creek all the way to Cranbrook, up to Golden, to the Alberta border and to the American border to the east, to the south as we move east here. We currently are supporting 18 families. 14 are homeowners. They're in a mortgage, and 4 are occupiers. 3 ready to sign mortgages this year. The houses range all the way from Rock Creek, Greenwood. We have the bulk of housing in Grand Forks. There's 14 homes, 14 families. And then the rest are spread amongst Castlegar, Nelson, Cranbrook. We're currently planning to build 6 more homes in Castlegar. We're hoping to break ground in about a month and have 6 families in new homes early next spring. This is a modular design. Their townhouse design, it's going to be 2 buildings. One's a 4-plex, so they're actually 4 apartments, but they look like townhouses. They're stacked. And then there's a separate building on the same site. It's a 2-unit family. They are actual townhouses. It's a modular design. There'll be very little volunteer hours available for the build site, which is changing the model that Habitat has been using for decades, because we're moving to the modular because of insurance and liability and all sorts of different issues. We're not doing stick builds as much anymore, so there's not a need for volunteer hours. So the good news of that is that volunteers, the families have to put in 500 volunteer hours before they can sign a mortgage with Habitat. Those 500 hours can be spent supporting a public library, a women's resource center, a community ski hill, any nonprofit in the community. So, or in a restore if there happens to be one in the community. The good news is that I think we've built 24 units over the last several decades. 3 families have paid off their mortgages in Grand Forks and own their homes outright now. So those are huge success stories. They've been stable, families have been stable, kids have been able to stay in the same schools, you know, throughout their growing up years. So we've just had the City Hall meeting, a public meeting, the first one in Castlegar Monday evening. And unfortunately, there were several local residents who were against the build for all sorts of different reasons: snow removal, congestion. Those people can't afford to put snow tires on their cars, so they're going to cause a problem. And we're not against a habitat build in our community. We just like to make it a single family home. That's not going to happen. That's not efficient. That's not best use of the land. So this is a joint effort, the one in Castlegar, between the city of Castlegar. They've donated the land to Habitat. So, and the rest is being built with Habitat funds. So I'm the chair of the Family Services, so I span the whole region. And so I field the phone calls from desperate families. Looking for affordable housing. And I have nothing to offer them. Habitat doesn't do emergency funding. All I can do is give them some phone numbers, you know, about someone who might be able to help them. So I'm really pleased and privileged to be part of this group so I can build my network of possible contacts. So thank you all.
You're muted, Jan.
I want to be.
Take my own advice, right? Unmute. Thank you, William. And my comment was that just nice to hear, and great work that Habitat has been doing all along. Thank you. Given that we're running short of time, I still have a couple people on this roll call of possible reports. Jamie, any news from the school district?
No, I don't really have anything to report. It was more just to see where we kind of fit into this whole big picture. Unfortunately, our superintendent was not able to make it, so I'll be relaying. I've been taking lots of notes. I'll be relaying all the information from here and see how best we can give back into this group.
Well, yeah, I'm glad to have you back, and I'm happy that you guys responded to Chris's outreach on it. I think the school district plays a vital role in the community insofar as social programming goes. And so, you know, given that, glad to have you guys back, and hope that it continues. Thank you.
You bet, thanks.
Alan Cooper, Phoenix Foundation.
Okay, just very briefly here, and thanks. It's good to be back with this group here. Phoenix Foundation, we're definitely in transition right now. We have probably over half of us are relatively new board members. One of the challenges we face right now is we don't have a staff member. So we'll be on the lookout and advertising very soon for either an administrative assistant or a part-time executive director. We're trying very desperately as board members right now to fill in, and there's a lot of stuff to do. As you probably know, we also are almost coterminous with the school district. We serve from Christina Lake to Big White. So we're very well aware of our geographical requirements to serve that area. We've just completed our major granting session with the endowments, and the approvals have gone out. And so luckily we're able to provide about $60,000 or so in grants to different organizations. And again, we've tried to spread them out geographically from, I think this time they go from Beaverdale to Christina Lake. So we've done fairly well with that. But again, because we are without a staff member right now, we're having to pedal hard, and all board members trying to fill in as best we can. We've also just started participation in the neighborhood small grant program. We're looking probably most likely to roll that out in September. We're getting close to July right now, and not much is happening in July and August, and I think a lot of people are going to want to be doing recreation and visiting in that time. So we're looking at the neighborhood small grants are for individuals and for up to $500, and they're for some very small projects. They don't require a lot of bookkeeping, but there's sometimes they have some of the biggest impact in the area. So we're looking to do that. And finally, one of the things, we just finished a 3-day summit with Community Foundations Canada, and clearly one of the challenges that we face, I think that a lot of foundation boards face, is diversity. How do we address diversity, not only on our foundation boards, but in our grant approvals? And it's interesting, we're looking at bringing on one new board member, but he's a university professor, and I don't know if that really gives the kind of diversity that we're looking at in the long range. One of the statements that was made that was interesting at the recent summit was foundations boards tend to be extracurricular activities for wealthy old white men. So that kind of makes a person sit up and think. And we certainly, that's going to be one of the challenges. We'll be going into strategic planning in September, looking really at the interest at how do we diversify our board. And I've got a couple of ideas with regard to that, but until we can actually get on a staff member to help us with so many of the complicated financial things that we do and the records that we keep, it's going to be a lot of work for all of us until we get that done. So that's basically my report, and glad to be back here.
Nice to see you back, Ellen. Thank you very much. Questions for Ellen? We'll move forward then. Tammy, I haven't asked you yet. Anything new at Blessings?
So we have our roof repaired finally, and we will be able to open our Friday drop-in come September. So following the long weekend, our doors will be open on Fridays, and there's a few people at this table who typically come and assist with giving some wraparound services. So you're welcome to come back. Quite excited about that. We really leaned into food security during the whole COVID time. And so we're continuing with the food recovery. We've, since February 1st, processed more than 60,000 pounds of food that's been diverted from the landfill from one grocery store in Grand Forks. And these foods have gone as far as Big White, and we're hoping to continue that. The exciting piece for me about that is it is people with lived experience that are in the kitchen doing the work with me. My team is amazing. They show up on time, they work hard, and they work well. And so I'm really excited about opening the door to others as well. COVID has made it really difficult to just include everybody, but you know, it's coming. It's coming. We can get back to functioning. So I wanted to thank Amanda for your report. Very well put together. Thank you. So,
questions for Tammy? And I see Kathy all alone in the corner there. Kathy, have you got anything to report from RDKB? You're muted, Kathy.
Now I'm not.
You're good.
Okay. You already said that about the ALR changing their policies to allow secondary dwellings. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet, but it's good news for the housing crunch. I think
absolutely.
It is. You already talked about that. And
I'm sorry for stealing your thunder. I didn't know you were going to bring it up. I saw a chance for a bit of a segue there.
No problem. We got her covered.
All right. I think we've covered everybody. Folks, we have some time constraints today. we've got some old business to move through, and we've got a report yet that's going to take probably upwards of 20 minutes to half an hour. Typically, these meetings are a 2-hour meeting. We've been adjourning for 3, but I'm just going to forewarn you that we'll probably end up being here till 3:15 today. I hope that's okay with everyone. That's our mandate. That said, we'll move forward on the agenda. We had some old business, and we had a report from Chris regarding membership attendance concerns. I see you were fairly successful. We've got people back at the table here that were sorely missed. So go ahead, Chris.
Yes, Chair. The meeting did direct the recording secretary, that's me, to go out and see if I could touch bases with some of the founding members who were absent. I've been quite successful in getting commitments and people back to the table. I want to thank Jamie for returning, for William for coming forward from Habitat, because I really think that's a piece of the puzzle too. And Ellen from Phoenix Foundation, and getting Bev back to represent the IH. I did also have commitments from Karen Herrick, who wanted to participate but couldn't quite get into this meeting, as well as Anna Lotard, who a bit of a snafu with dates. Probably my fault because I sent too many emails, and but that, the school district certainly is a invaluable social service agency, and it's great to see them at the table. So that's basically it. I did reach out to the Downtown Business Association, but I haven't heard back. But other than that, I see that we've had 17 participants here today, Chair. So I think we're probably looking good going into the summer recess and re-adjourning in the fall. If there's any questions about that membership, I'll try to answer them.
Good work, Chris. Thanks for doing that. Christine Thompson.
I was just going to say, Chris, I'm the liaison to the Downtown Business Association. So I will send out an email and see if we can representation to these meetings.
I know they've been busy. You can see my back.
They have.
Anyways.
They have, yeah.
Okay. So that's it. If there's no other questions, I think we're looking good for membership. I hope that allays concerns from the members who were here, because I certainly don't want to lay the blame on put the pressure on the people who are here for the people who aren't. I think the table seems to be cohesive, and it goes through ups and downs, but it seems to be working just fine. Thanks, Chair.
Good job, Chris. Thank you. Any questions for Chris? Okay. I don't see any. We're going to move on to new business very quickly. I think a subject that has been tearing at everybody's heartstrings for the past couple of weeks regarding the discovery at the Kamloops Residential School. I think everyone in the country has been doing a little soul searching regarding it. I know I put out an inquiry this morning about what decolonization means. I'm trying to figure that one out and get a grip on it. And I've had some pretty interesting responses. That said, who is going to address this issue? I don't see anyone assigned to it. Who suggested this for the agenda, Chris?
Which item, Chair? I kind of missed that.
Impact of the Kamloops Residential School findings?
It was my suggestion, Chair, simply because I don't know what the impact is likely to be on our community. So I was just going to send it out to the table. If there's anybody at the table, give us a heads up on how it's might impact us, I would appreciate it. I'm certainly not an expert in this field, but you know, it is certainly definitely an impactful event, and it's yet to unfold in our community, in our country. Anybody out there got any other comments, or basically a heads up? How will it impact us?
Okay, well, Chris has requested feedback from the group. Anyone have any commentary? I see a hand up there, Tammy.
So I think I can't speak to the impact on everybody in our city. I've certainly learned in the last couple of weeks how many people in my social circle, my work circle, my faith circle, and even community circle have been either attendees of a residential school or had a loved one or were raised by someone. And I've been struggling also, Jan, with that idea of what is colonization? How do we decolonize? And this is a question that's been posed by Indigenous friends for years. And I owe most of them an apology for not really listening. I think that our neighbors go through things and we kind of know that's happening, but we don't connect. And then when there's some touchstone event like the situation in Kamloops, then we all connect at once. And I think it's really important not to pressure our Indigenous friends at this time for the answers, because it's time we found our own answers, is where I'm coming from. I'm not Indigenous. I have Indigenous people in my family. And so I'm just kind of coming from the prompts that they've given me. I think for those of us that grew up in a dysfunctional situation, we didn't know it was dysfunctional until we seen other situations. And I believe colonization is a dysfunctional situation. We've all been raised in a dysfunctional family setting, and we don't know it because we haven't seen anything else. So I think just asking the question is a huge step forward, and I appreciate you putting it out, Jan. Thank you.
All right, Heather?
Yeah, I'd just like to say this, same as Tammy, I'm not Indigenous myself, but I work with a lot of Indigenous folks. And one of the biggest thing we need to be aware of is that this kind of trauma brings up past trauma. And so your Indigenous friends may be quite vulnerable right now and may be quite, we all deal with trauma differently. So just being open and respectful and honest about your feelings is something I've always found works. I try to be politically correct and pretend like I know it all, then they know I'm not being genuine. And being genuine and being open is two of the biggest things that you can do. And just ask if you have an Indigenous friend. I mean, people would rather tell you how to treat them than be treated in a specific way, is my findings. But anyways, that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Heather. Anyone else? Alan?
Yeah, I'm glad you actually brought up the word decolonization, because I think many of us are struggling with that. Certainly at this recent Community Foundation's 3-day summit, you heard that constantly, and people are struggling with the term. So thank you for bringing it up. And I really don't know totally what it does mean. I guess one of the things it's caused me to do is to rethink sort of who I am. And I used to kind of, I don't know, shrug things off and say, well, I got where I am, whatever I have at this point in time, by hard work and determination. And I certainly grew up poor, and I remember hauling wood for the stove, the wood stove, and hauling water from a well, and not having an indoor toilet and things like that, and saying, well, I got where I am because just simply of hard work. And I think there's a lot to do with that. But I also remember growing up beside the poorest reserve in Alberta, the Alexis Reserve, and knowing how they struggled simply because they were, at that point in time, Indian, Indigenous, and come to realize that I have had many advantages simply because I'm white. And I think that's part of the realization that I've had to come to at my advanced age in life. The other thing that I think we have to remember, it gets sometimes we can get a little complacent in this area, I find, because we see a lot of us Caucasians here. And one of the first people that I decided to meet when I moved here in 2011 was Michael Struikoff, the superintendent, just because I was in public education. Nice to know the guy who was in charge of public education at that time. And so one of the things Michael told me, he said, 25% of our students in our school district identify as Indigenous. And I thought, I would never have predicted that. And also coming from an education background, knowing that Indigenous students often don't identify as Indigenous. They don't necessarily self-identify. And so I think it behooves all of us to kind of rethink our positions and to be a little bit more aware of who we are. And we're going to continue to struggle with a lot of these, decolonization being one thing that we have to struggle with, but it's going to be a process of learning and relearning for all of us. So thanks for the opportunity to speak on that.
Thank you, Alan. Heather?
If I could just say, excuse me. I took a program, it was called the Village Workshop. It was an experiential training into what colonization did to Indigenous people. And it was really life-changing. So if anybody ever has a chance to do the Village Workshop, I highly recommend it. It's a really great way to learn and gain understanding about the Indigenous situation.
Thank you. Chris?
Chair, our 2:30 guest is here.
Yeah.
And so maybe we should just move along on the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Chris, I think we need to be prepared to run till 3:15 today. Amber, well, we had one more item. Chris, do you want to defer that till the end of the meeting then? Estimating the hidden homeless topic?
Yeah, I would like to put that either at the end of the meeting or just table it for a future meeting. It is quite a topic, and there's a lot of scholarly research that has gone into it. But perhaps it's dealt with a little bit more length. If for the September meeting, I'm quite willing to distribute some of the scholarly stuff, and maybe we'll have some more practical time for more practical discussions on that in September.
So then Chris, can I ask you to make a quick motion to table it with that in mind, and then we'll just, it'll end up on the agenda. We'll have a motion on the table, just something to the effect that you'd like to table the topic, and we'll look for a seconder and do a call to question quickly. And
yeah, so move, Chair, move that the topic, the hidden homeless, be deferred till the September agenda.
Okay, we have a motion. Tammy, is that you seconding? Thank you. We have a seconder. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Against? No one. So unanimous. We'll move it to September. Thank you, Chris. That brings us to a report from Amber. Amber, welcome. I didn't get a chance to welcome you earlier. I saw you just popped in there 15 minutes ago kind of thing. So welcome to the Grand Forks Social Services Advisory Group, and we're looking forward to your presentation. So are you going to need to share a screen or anything?
Yeah, if I could share a screen, that would be
All right, so Chris, you're going to have to enable that. All right, Amber, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you so much. Apologies if this gets complicated on the way
Oh,
there.
it shouldn't be too complicated.
I think we're okay.
Yeah, it's all working, Amber. We're seeing it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Oh, we're at the last slide. We don't want to start at the last slide, guys. Apologies. Give me 1 second. No, that's not. Of course, this happens when we're sharing, right? Okay, cool. Thank you very much for inviting me to your meeting today. I brought this really brief presentation to the Grand Forks Community Action Table last week. And yeah, I'm excited to have these conversations with anybody who wants to. So I work with Anchors and Redone in the West Kootenay Boundary region. Redone is a peer group, and we are connected to Hope in Grand Forks. They're our sister group. And my work with Anchors takes me, yeah, kind of throughout the region. This project is a collaboration with Amada Erickson and the Nelson Fentanyl Task Force, the Castlegar Fentanyl Opioid Working Group, and we are looking at experiences around equity in healthcare. My portion of the research focuses on peer experiences. And for this project, I had the opportunity to interview a whole bunch of people. This work all takes place within the territories of the Ktunaxa, Syilx, and Sinaiks. Most of my work centers around Nelson Trail, Castlegar, but it, Anchors covers the whole region. We do talk to people outside of those centers in this project as well. We initially set out to interview 10 people, of which I have interviewed 8, most of them in Castlegar, Nelson, and Trail, a couple up the valley. I'm holding space for 2 interviews in Grand Forks, which I am hoping to get done in the next couple days. Full transparency, the challenges in scheduling those interviews largely were obstacles to do with people's challenges accessing healthcare. Stuff was coming up in people's lives, and it was too lived to be talking to me about it. These were all done in phone, Zoom, and in person, and covered a pretty representative sample considering how small it was. They were all conversational interviews. The slide in front of you is kind of key themes that emerged without much teasing. I had a few guiding questions, but was really delightedly surprised to find that people were really eager to share their stories with me. I often didn't have to ask questions. They just volunteered up really complex and vulnerable stories of often quite traumatic experiences in healthcare. It was a great honor, really, to receive so much openness from people and to share, that difficult vulnerability. But as you see here in this little theme slide, avoidance was a tremendously common theme. Avoidance came up in every single conversation I had in this project. Basically all participants identified that they avoid seeking healthcare. And that's across the entire spectrum, right? That's emergency system care, that's opioid agonist therapy, that's detox, that's treatment, that's the dentist, that's everything. Some people identified that, they were unable to disclose, right? That disclosing their substance use would be a risk to their current care, to their future care, to their safety. Some people identified that they had just completely stopped engaging in healthcare because it was causing too much harm, unintended consequences. And then the next part of the research, we talked a bit more about, positive experiences in healthcare, things that made accessing care possible Again, really, really obvious themes came out really, really quickly. Communication was paramount. In every conversation I had, that was identified as either a barrier or a solution. People told me really sensitive stories of them being spoken about and around, but never to by their healthcare providers, of not getting proper information, of having no, healthy collaboration. And then they told me stories about times when those things were present and how much better the outcomes were and how much more engaged they were and willing to, expand on their wellness by engaging with medical services. We tried to get into the details of what that feels like. What does it feel like to be cared for when you're receiving healthcare? And I think that the quote that struck me the most was one person told me that it was just about feeling normal, feeling important, and getting what I needed, which is actually what all of us want when we try to access healthcare. This is not a unique situation. Other people identified, a whole, like the quote on the bottom, true engagement with a client and really actually knowing them as a whole person was a thing that came through quite often. But yeah, I mean, all of these throughout the interviews, all of the things that worked well centered around inclusion, communication, and care, which again, I think are, very normal, expectable things when we're seeking healthcare. Toward the end, we started to talk a bit about what would make it better? What would make your experiences accessing healthcare safer, more accessible, more productive? As you see, communication again is top of the list all the time. A lot of people identified a need for more peer workers and frontline advocates, a person in the medical system who has your back, who's helping you to negotiate for what you need, who's helping you to, remember and process what you're being told. Some people really generously offered up things like better working conditions for healthcare workers. We all know that this system is strapped and that, individual burnout is a really real factor. The people I interviewed were extremely compassionate about, the difficulties faced by people in the healthcare system, but yet still are on the receiving end of those challenges. Some people identified things like trauma-informed spaces, making our medical system safer to be in, privacy spaces, spaces where people can be in a waiting room that's not so exposed. And then some of these last points I think are, really, really important in our small towns. Non-punitive and consensual information sharing. The way that we share information about people impacts their safety in the system. And second chances. This one is huge. It sounds really small on paper, but it really is huge in our small towns. If you only have one or two doctors who can provide you service and you had a bad time with them 10 years ago and they're still holding that over you, you don't have access to healthcare and you don't have options. And I know, those are difficult things to integrate into practice, but yeah, a lot of people echoed that quote at the bottom, just a little bit of kindness and human decency. It's transformational. So this project will be culminating in a report in July, which will be distributed first to all peer participants for review, at which point I'm inviting everyone back for a workshop to work on developing an information tool for peers and plausibly some provider education for people in the healthcare system. Acknowledging that I have to be out of here in 15 minutes, I will stop sharing. And if anybody has any questions, I'm here for 15. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you. interesting report. Any questions? Tammy, I see your hand up there.
Thank you, Amber. Great presentation. How can we access that report when it does come out?
I don't know. I will be forwarding it to Amanda when my component
Okay.
is complete. And she has expressed and can confirm here maybe that we will be able to distribute it through the Community Action Team Network. And I'm guessing could send it to this group too.
Yeah, that's right. We can distribute it through the CATs, local community action teams. And also it will be distributed through Community Action Initiative. They have a Facebook page now. So if you want to check out more of the work of other provincial community action teams, we just presented this at the conference a couple weeks ago. And so, yeah, so Prairie, who we work with there, she says that all these reports will also be distributed through them, Community Action Initiative. So thank you.
William? You're muted, William.
Amber, thank you for that presentation. It just really struck home to me. It's not just limited to the medical profession. I think it applies to every government, social service, nonprofit service provider across the country, across the world. It's really important information.
I would agree. Like it's a tiny project focusing on people with substance use experience in the West Kootenay Boundary region and healthcare. But the truth is these themes are pervasive across all of the doors of access that people need. And, I agree, William. Thank you.
Any other feedback, questions?
Can you provide us with a link to that Facebook page?
You're muted, Amber.
To the Community Action Initiative, that one?
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
Yes, we can find that definitely.
Thank you.
I have one observation that kind of struck me, and that's, when I was looking at some of the commentary that your interviewees provided, it struck me that they're not alone in those observations. I think that each one of us maybe has gone to see a medical professional along the way and felt that we hadn't been, I don't know, treated with much compassion, I suppose, is the word I'm looking for. And that, that there's an expectation in our society with the medical system that we rely on our medical community to be professionals and to be non-discriminatory. And I think that, you might talk to a senior citizen that feels that they're receiving the same sort of treatment. So, it's a reflection, obviously, on, the clients that you're dealing with and their experience. But I think that maybe this is a bigger problem. And that's not to take away from your point, but just to bring into consideration that I think a lot of us have experienced things like this along the way. Also, you made a comment about chronic pain issues, and it's one that I've been looking at lately on behalf of a friend that is suffering from a terminal illness. And she cannot get anything other than Tylenol to treat her incredible pain. And just to, I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, but bring another perspective to the table. She complains of the opiate crisis as having caused her problem, because she's laying on a critical care bed and the doctors won't give her opiates. And her argument is, what do I care if I go to my grave an addict? I'm dying. Heal my pain, take care of me. And the answer has been no, here's a Tylenol. So there's another perspective that kind of ties into what you were saying about the chronic pain issues, and there's some people that have been adversely affected in other ways as well. So anyway, that's my point. Any other feedback?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I think it's really interesting because, the majority of the people here are young. And one of the things that I've become more and more aware of, especially talking with other seniors, is the number of doctors that are totally dismissive of us because we're old. It's like, we have no time for you. You're not interesting. You're not, you're just not part of what we want to be involved with, and they don't have time for you. And I was even told once and I don't waste doctors' times because I worked in healthcare my whole life. But I was told I had one more question for him. He says, I don't have time for you. I don't have time for this. And I'm thinking, we've got some real serious issues, and I hate to be, ageist myself, but it seems to be the younger doctors coming up that seem to have that attitude. But it's difficult for seniors to get listened to anymore.
And I would add to that, maybe I didn't go very clearly into the demographics that we interviewed. I did interview a number of seniors, and I would agree that seniors with substance use experience are multiply affected by these issues, and definitely chronic pain. John, Jan, sorry, I'm not reading your name here.
Yeah.
The chronic pain and prescribing issues are definitely feeding into this, and in sort of cyclical ways. Like, there is a logic behind the argument that to a degree the opioid crisis was caused by overprescribing, and that is a piece of it, right? It is not the whole piece of it, but it is a piece of it. And so there has been a reactive move on behalf of healthcare to reduce prescriptions, which has multiple effects. Some people, it leads them to street drugs. There are people I interviewed for this project who at some point made the decision to lose their housing and all their stability because they had no quality of life, because their doctor would only prescribe this much. They are now homeless and using street fentanyl daily. And that was a good choice for them because they were unable to receive the care that they needed to have any quality of life from a medical system. So you're right, it's complicated.
Any other feedback, observations, questions?
Yeah, I just have a little something to say. Yeah, thanks for that report, Amber. Very interesting and not surprising to me. Because we get people referred a lot to mental health services from various places, and doctors a lot. They want us to somehow help these people because they've become addicted to their pain medication. Whether that's an accurate way to describe it or not, I don't know. And I'm not trying to be politically correct or anything here. I'm just saying that, people that have been started on medication and definitely need it, and at the point where the doctor is not going to prescribe what they need anymore, and so the doctor sends them to us to somehow deal with it. And it is very frustrating because I think, give them their quality of life. And I know the doctors are under the gun from the medical associations, and they don't want to lose their licenses either. So as Amber said, and somebody else mentioned, it is a very complex issue. And we do see it all over the place. And I don't know if there's any simple answers. I often think the pendulum swings too far one way before it kind of normalizes itself and makes sense anymore. So, I know that opiate overprescribing has caused an awful lot of awful things to happen in this world, but I also know that, sometimes it's it's the thing that's needed for chronic pain, and a person should be able to make that decision. It's their life. And yeah, but I also think the doctors are under the gun somewhere in there. I'm not excusing bad behavior by doctors, but they get their licenses looked at and stuff too. So yeah, it's a complex issue, absolutely.
Which I think is a really important point, Bev. Like part of the barriers that people who use drugs experience accessing healthcare is the doctors are scared to provide care. And I do hear and agree that there are concerns faced by non-substance using seniors and being dismissed by doctors, but it's not driven by the same level of fear and resistance. Like, people just experience an unwillingness to have their needs met because we don't want to be audited or have our wrists slapped or.
It's been a really interesting discussion, and thank you for the presentation. Last chance for a question or a comment. All right, that said, we had no late items put on the agenda today. We typically look at next steps. Are there any next steps we need to consider? I'm seeing.
Sorry, Tammy here.
Tammy, thanks.
I think it was Heather had brought up a course she had taken, and I note that Amber sent us a message about a university that has a course also. Here it is. There's a free course from the U of A that I hear is good. And this is for online courses for Indigenous Canada. Now, Heather, the course you took, is that something that could be brought into this area? And I'm just wondering if our next step should be, as a group, pursuing some education that would help us have a better understanding of decolonization. I know a few years back, I took a blanket course with Victoria Rung, and it was very powerful. It was very educational and very well delivered. I don't know if she's still putting on that course, but I think it would be helpful if we all participated in something like that as a next step.
Yeah, the one I suggested, definitely she travels around the country presenting it. I'll just have to get the contact information and I'll get back to you, Tammy, about that.
Thank you.
Okay, and I would think that to add to that, I would think that different agencies are probably having this discussion as well as we move further into this thing. But yeah, it'll be interesting, Heather, if you could keep us updated then on opportunities. I see Ms. Massey has her hand up.
I just had kind of a quick question. I'm still kind of wrapping my head around this particular agency and why everyone is where they are in the agency. I was just curious if we had considered having a local Indigenous representative on the committee.
If I can offer some explanation, we've had discussion here and there as the committee has evolved since its inception about membership. And there was an initial group that was invited to the table. And then we've got a policy in our terms of reference whereby if somebody would like to make a recommendation to the table to have a group represented at the table, that would come to the committee for discussion. And then depending on the outcome of that discussion and subsequent motion and decision, that an invitation would be extended. So if you want to, invite someone to the table, the table certainly is open to that discussion. The one criteria, and I believe Mr. Pratt is probably in the best position to lend some insight here, but if I recall, the one consideration, and I don't know that it's etched in stone, was that they do provide some service of some sort. Now, that's not to exclude, an indigenous group or whatever, but we have to, I think, lend some rationale there. And then, of course, there was community representation. So within the umbrella of those two concepts, I would say yes, bring it to the table for discussion, and then we'll see where it goes. And then it depending on how the table rules, we would extend an invitation.
Okay, that's fair. So if that's something that you guys would be interested in, I would be wanting to add it to the table if it's possible.
Sure. And like typically what we would do would be to ask you to bring it to the next meeting, but that's quite a ways away. I don't know if that's possible or whether that's amenable to you.
Fine with me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Pratt?
I think the one thing that we need to be very cautious of is because this is intersectional territory, the local Indigenous politics really becomes who speaks for whom. The Boundary All Nations Aboriginal Council is made up of various members. So the kind of general rule of thumb is you can be any Indigenous person and join Bannock. The Boundary Métis Association often has cross-sectional members who are members of Bannock and also the Boundary Métis Association, but it's inversely. So you cannot be status Indigenous, Métis, or pardon me, Inuit or First Nations and be a part of the Métis Association. And so there always becomes these questions of who speaks for whom. I think if the table will indulge me, this may be a question best addressed to the elders in Osoyoos to really see what they feel would be the best representation for local Indigenous. I know that the Sinixt Nation is trying to kind of reassert their position in community, but they're a few years away, I think, from really having a stable ability to provide that feedback. I think reaching out to Chief Louis and his band may be an appropriate step. While that may cause some struggles with some of our local Indigenous people, I think if we're looking for a voice that can be seen as speaking for most, it's either Bannock or them.
I would have to agree completely, Darren, being no stranger to working with these groups, and that I think you nailed it. We do need to seek, I guess, what I'm going to term fair representation at the table. So we can't, I guess, Jamie, what the message is we can't just willy-nilly, find an Indigenous person to come to the table. There's more to be considered. And I think what Darren brought up is a very important consideration. I would suggest, as your chair today, that that sort of initiative definitely needs to take the form of a motion, and that would probably involve a motion that would recommend in one way or another that a delegation or a committee member reach out to the band office in Osoyoos, and that we craft something that would go to their desk and then end up back on ours. Does that sound fair, Mr. Pratt?
Oh, I gave my 2 cents. I don't have an opinion beyond what I expressed. Just Tammy actually sent me a question. We have to be very cautious. Coins is based in Ktunaxa territory, and the majority of their representation is Ktunaxa. This is not Ktunaxa territory.
That's right.
So while I appreciate the work that Coins does in our community, there is this political component to the composition of their agency. We are not on Ktunaxa territory.
Yeah, there's another consideration there.
Thank you, Karen. I have so much to learn.
I thought Coins was based in Castlegar. I thought that was their head base.
They are based there.
Ktunaxa is not Castlegar.
Well, and it sure ain't the boundary.
Yeah, but the point's understood. It gets, admittedly, it gets quite confusing. But as far as Grand Forks and the boundary goes, I think that we've all established that we are under the umbrella, let's say, of the in-commute. And given that we would go to Clarence Louis with regard to any decision like this. So we'll leave it like that. If somebody wants to think about a motion to bring to the table, I'm not certain that today's the day to do it, but I'm open to it. Tammy?
I don't have a motion at this time. I just think that we keep circling back to this place where we say again, all of our tables should have nothing about you without you. And it's just the place we keep circling back to where, you know, the people's lives we're discussing, whether it be seniors, whether it be youth, whether it be Indigenous people, whether it be people that are living with substance use, whether it be people with disabilities, you know, we just shouldn't be making any decisions for anybody without them at the table. And so it's the how do we do that that becomes the complex piece. And we're there again. So.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I hear you. I see Amanda has got a hand up.
I just wanted to share that COINS did receive monies this year for Indigenous education throughout the region. I believe that will be based on the studies they did last year and interviews on, you know, access to healthcare for Indigenous in the region. So I believe that would be, you know, quite suitable for this group in terms of training and learning more around decolonization. I think Chris Selican is away presently, but I'm sure that, you know, she could be an important part of, you know, figuring out how to have more Indigenous representation on the group in terms of service provision. At least COINS is the regional service provider for Grand Forks and the Boundary, as everyone's aware. And just to add to that, I'd also like to say, yeah, too bad Tanis isn't on to speak to this, of course. We know that there's under servicing to our Indigenous populations throughout the region. And by the very nature of the funding streams that come through COINS not being enough to service our Indigenous populations. And so I hear that time and time again, especially hearing about Indigenous youth being underserviced within the Boundary region. So I'd like to speak to that as well. Holly Hume would be the one to speak more on that. But having a background in servicing youth, including Indigenous youth, myself in my career, I think that this is something that this table really should bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, you know, I understand your feelings about the political correctness of all this, but when we look at it as part of the full picture, this is a colonial mentality. Well, if they can't agree, how can we include them? Something that has been a big part of my education into the needs of Indigenous people in our areas. And, you know, I mean, trail is really bad because essentially they've always said, well, they're extinct. And we know that's not true. So including them all maybe, or including them in a way that gives them the option is maybe the best way. Just a thought.
Yeah. Okay, Tammy.
I want to echo that, Heather, and I see there's a message in the side that echoes mine, that Tanis has represented the COINS for the past 3 years at this table, and her efforts have been more than appreciated and very valuable. And another comment that says perhaps we should once again ask Bannock to sit at the table. And Heather, I'm with you. If different groups can't get along, we just invite them all. It's not like we all got along, but we're here, aren't we? So, you know, let's get everybody at the table that needs to be here. So.
Okay, well, you know, I'm going to try ground the conversation a bit because I'm feeling that we're kind of jumping around a bit. We've got multiple issues going on. We had a request from Jamie that there be some sort of Aboriginal representation at the table. And, you know, obviously we do have coins at the table. Darren brought up the consideration that if there would be any further addition to the table that we would probably want to consider the administrative role of the Osuyas band in all of this and run it by them. So I think we've heard several considerations. What I do read from the table is that everybody, I think, is in favor of more Aboriginal representation. We just have to be careful, is what I'm hearing. And so, you know, if somebody wants to take it on to kind of prepare more for the table, I'm sure everybody would be amenable and we could move forward with some kind of initiative. Jamie, can we put that in your hands or?
Yes, you can. As I put in the chat there, I'm not sure if everybody saw, but there's another group that I'm part of where I posed the same question, and I haven't had a chance to follow up and kind of see what their answer was. I have a feeling it'll be similar, but absolutely, I would be happy to follow up and at least maybe report in September. Does that make sense?
Oh, you know, Mr. Moslin will be reviewing the recording and writing the minutes. So this can be carried over to the next meeting as an item of, I guess it would be new business moving forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Any last minute considerations? Okay, one other thing we need to talk about, and then we will move to adjourn, which would be appropriate. It's 3:14. We've got 1 minute. We've had a suggestion from Mr. Moslin that the committee recess over the summer and reconvene probably after school starts in September. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, he's suggested a date of September the 15th. And I did send out in chat that is the week of the UBCM, which I will be attending.
Oh, right, yeah.
So could we have it the week before or the week after? The 8th to the 22nd.
Thoughts?
I'm certainly in favor of that too, Chair, and thanks to Councillor Thompson for pointing out the conflict with UBCM. I haven't got it in my calendar yet.
Maybe the 22nd would be better because I think the week before we might be meeting with ministers.
I hear you, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So maybe could I make a motion that we hold our next meeting September the 22nd?
Any objections? September 22nd?
I'll just raise one point because we're discussing Indigenous people and representation. We do have a project going on with First Nations Health Authority, and that's 2 webinars which are open to the public. So it looks like one is booked from 2 to 3:30 on Wednesday, September 22nd. So that would be a conflict. I just wanted to put it out there for anyone on this table that wanted to join.
Is anyone from this table anticipating being part of that workshop?
Now that I'm aware of it, I wouldn't mind looking into it.
Yeah, the information will be released in the summer about it. They've done a few sessions throughout the province so far, and it's all speakers through First Nations Health Authority. So they just do these 2 consecutive webinars, and it's for communities and providers. Yeah, 2 to 3:30 on those 2 consecutive dates, 22nd and 29th. So there, you know, of course, can always join in the following week. Just wanted to mention. Thank you.
Okay, so, you know, let's try avoid the conflict on it. Kathy, I see a hand up. Sorry, go ahead.
There, okay. I'm wondering if we could change it for September to a Tuesday. Or another day besides Wednesday.
Or
Well,
have
I
it
think
earlier.
the UBCM spans the week, so, you know, that week will be out of consideration altogether. So that leaves open the week then of September the 8th, which September the 8th was a Wednesday, I believe, Christine, was that correct?
Yes, but the council may be meeting with ministers.
Oh, I see, yeah.
that week.
So you
what I
wanted to go,
Suggest is if we had it on the 22nd, kept the date, but moved the time to an earlier. Say met at 10 o'clock in the morning.
any objection there?
No
Uh,
objection here.
Mental health wouldn't be present on that day. We have every Wednesday morning. We have a team thing. So we would.
Okay,
Well, what about back-to-back meetings? What if we started at noon?
sure.
Sure. So basically, Chair, what I hear you saying is next meeting is suggested is noon, September 22nd,
Yes, or let's say 12:15.
12:15. Right.
Yeah. 12:15.
It's, John, it's just the time I'm unavailable to. I'm at the Community Futures annual meeting, so,
Okay.
but it's just one of those things. We're all going to be unavailable at some time.
29.
Well, then why don't we just leave it at for the 22nd at 1:15? And those of us that can make it, fine, if, you know, instead of,
Yeah,
We're never going to please everyone.
I get it.
and I won't be there.
Okay, let's make a decision. We're running over. It's 3:19. So I think we've heard about everybody's availability. We're back to September 22nd at 1:15. Anyone against? I'm seeing none, so that's agreed. Next meeting will be September 22nd, 1:15. At this point, it would be appropriate for a motion to adjourn if anyone would like to offer up a motion. Mr. Cooper, thank you, and a seconder. And we're adjourned. Everybody have a great summer.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.